I started mastering skee ball. I started getting the cost of the game lower and lower every week as I learned the whole system. I kept a spreadsheet of the hours I put in, the money I put in, the profit I got back. And on average, it was about $100 an hour I was making playing skee ball. I was at my girlfriend's dorm, just chilling, and I made 14 bucks. So it did click, and I thought, wow, I don't have to physically be anywhere to make money. I can just make money while, I'm doing whatever I need to do. Scared money, don't make money.
Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my grandiloquent co-host, Chris Rasick. Today, we've got Gavin on the show. It goes by Gavin FBA on Instagram. Gavin is 21 years old. He started selling on Amazon in September of 2023 as a college freshman and also a baseball player. His first month, he did $500 in revenue. Very typical. 2 years later, he throws up 1.1 million in a single 30-day stretch. And in December of 2024, had his first six-figure profit month. And he's done this all through online arbitrage. But the backstory is what I am incredibly interested in. Before Amazon, Gavin was hustling skee ball, figuring out how to win some high-dollar prizes, then arbitrage those for a profit. And I would imagine that same pattern of finding an edge and exploiting it systematically is exactly what he's done on Amazon. So we're going to break that down a little bit. Gavin, I know you dropped out of college. You refused to pay yourself $1. You reinvested everything and you scaled your business. And that's unusual for someone of your age. So I am really fascinated in diving into your story. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Super excited.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, before we get started, you guys know the drill. This show isn't free. We spend minutes preparing for each one of these episodes. So if you get some value from this podcast, do us a solid, hit the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. The best way for us to grow this podcast by getting you to interact with it and show us that you want to see more content like this. You keep your end of the bargain and we'll keep coming back and doing this for you guys. All right, let's dive in. Gavin, before we get to Amazon, I want to go back a little bit further. Like, you're hustling skee ball, and I use the term hustling not in a derogatory sense. I don't want anybody to think that, but you're hustling skee ball at arcades in high school. Can you kind of walk us through that story? Like, how did that work? What were you winning? How did you figure that out? And how much were you making doing that?
Yeah, so it was my freshman year of high school when I first started playing skee ball. I had never played skee ball prior to that. So first couple months, I was just learning skee ball and essentially mastering it. But when I first started going to Pinheads, was the name of the arcade, I didn't have any idea in mind of I'm going to make this a side hustle, a business. I was just there for fun with a buddy playing skee ball. And then we ended up racking up a lot of tickets, went to the arcade to cash out, and we got a solid prize. It was like a nice headset, and we got it for a good value. So I noticed that right off the bat. I was like, okay, I see other prizes in here that I'm familiar with, such as Apple Pencils, PS5s, AirPods. And I realized if I master this game and I can get cheap swipes at the arcade, I can sell these prizes for profit. So that's exactly what I did. I started mastering skee ball. I started getting the cost of the game lower and lower every week as I learned the whole system. And basically my system was I would go to Costco and buy discounted gift cards, just like I do today with Amazon. It was 25% off Pinheads, my local arcade. And then I would go every Thursday to the arcade and play the arcade games. Thursday, they were 50% off games. So it used to be $1.50 a swipe. If I go Thursday, it's 75 cents a swipe on top of the 25% I'm saving. So that was kind of how I lowered my cost of play to make it reasonable to then flip the prizes. So I'd go there probably 4 hours every Thursday and just play skee ball all day. I did that for about 2 years, and the prizes I would flip, it was Apple Pencils, AirPods, PS5s, Oculuses. It's, the arcade, the VR
Mm-hmm.
Oculuses. I would flip those on StockX. And essentially my buy cost was, I had a whole spreadsheet for this. I was getting them for roughly $70 to $80, and I'd clear $300 on StockX after all the fees. That's an Oculus example. They also had gift cards. I would get Southwest gift cards, Airbnb, Uber, restaurants. So I also got a free trip out of it. It was pretty cool. And then they slowly started catching on to me after about 2 years on the skee ball side. So they lowered the jackpot on skee ball and raised the price to play. So when I noticed that, I wasn't getting as good of a margin as I used to get. So I then ventured off into other arcade games, and I found 3 other games that I could play profitably. So I ran into a couple roadblocks, just like entrepreneurship, found out a way to bypass it, to find new games, and I did that. So there's a collective total of 4 arcade games in there I mastered over the course of those 3 years to get the best buy costs I could on the prizes, and then flipped them all for a profit on StockX.
Dude, I love that story. You hear about those kind of things from people who end up building some unicorn, and so I love those kind of stories. And I have to ask, because I like skee ball. If I go to the arcade with my kids, like I play skee ball, I shoot some hoops, and maybe I hit a first person shooter, and that's about all I'm doing. How do you master the game of skee ball to, get as many points? Is it going after the 500, or is it just consistently hitting something else?
So you get 9 total skee balls, and the corners are 10,000 points, I guess. And my strategy was always go for the corner. To hit the jackpot, you had to get 5 out of the 9 balls in the corner pockets. So I would put a little bit of spin on it. I'm a righty, and I'd shoot for the left pocket. Put a little bit of spin on it, shooting up into the corner, and you bank it off the side of the wall, and it slides right into that top pocket. That's the strategy. The spin gives it like a basketball. A little bit of spin gives some giving in that hole, and you have to hit 5 out of 9, and you keep that jackpot. It's at 54,000 points. You keep it there, because if you miss, the ball then goes in the 1,000. So you hit 5, 50,000 plus the 4 that you miss, 54,000 to hit the jackpot, and you keep it there all day and stay like that. And the amount of money I was able to make, I kept a spreadsheet of the hours I put in, the money I put in, the profit I got back. And on average, it was about $100 an hour I was making playing skee ball.
That's crazy.
Over the course of those 3 years, I was able to make about $25,000 doing that. And once they started catching on to the skee ball, and I found these other games, there was this one game where you press a button and a ball drops through a bridge into a little slot. The slot's moving and the bridge is going up and down. There was a time where the game was like, it was still active, but it was out of order essentially. And the bridge was just frozen. Like it wouldn't move up and down, which made the game a lot easier. So I took full advantage of those 2 weeks. The game was still able to play, and it was just easier on my end. So I was there right when they opened, and then all the way till close some days, just taking full advantage of that. And every time you hit the jackpot on that, you got 3,000 tickets. So those 2 weeks, I was probably making $400 to $500 an hour, just collecting 3,000 tickets every time that ball went through the slot.
That's crazy. So I got to ask, so that happens in high school. If you go further back, like this is unusual for any high school kid to figure out. Have you always been this way? Have you always just been curious at how you can find a loophole in things? Were there any things you took advantage of before that kind of put you on this path?
Yeah, I've always had an entrepreneur mindset and vision and everything. And how can I turn this into a profit? One day, my brother and I, you guys remember the Popeyes chicken sandwiches? They were extremely popular at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
We would go to those stores and there's lines wrapped around the whole building. We would buy as many as they would sell to us, a handful. And it was a lot at a smaller scale, but it was just the concept that we had and the way we looked at it. We would buy 15 to 20 sandwiches. We would take those sandwiches, go to the back of the line, and sell them for $4 or $5 higher and make some money, because it was just like Amazon, the convenience. They didn't have to wait. They paid us $10 for the sandwich. We would get it for $5, make $5 a sandwich, and then go to the next Popeyes and do it again.
That's awesome. Are your parents, do they own a business, or like how did this get instilled in you?
They do not own a business. My mom is a nurse and my dad is an accountant, and they have never ran a business. I got into it because of my brother, my older brother. He sold shoes. He started when he was like 13 years old, flipping shoes, the Yeezys, Jordans, all those hype shoes. And I kind of got into that as well. So I also sold shoes when I was younger, learning from him, learning how to turn a product into profit and just flipping stuff. That was StockX, Go era, lots of sneaker events we went to. So yeah, I learned from my brother at the very beginning and kind of took that into my future projects.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Because let's be honest, there's plenty of, freshman age of high school, plenty of kids would rather have the stuff, than to take it a step further and profit off it. But that's, I don't know. I have more arcade questions, but for the sake of the podcast, we'll move on a little bit. You mentioned your brother, you mentioned flipping shoes. You did a little bit of that as well, right? You flip shoes with your brother. I've heard there are stories of camping outside stores for Jordan drops, selling it on StockX and Goat. Then it was your brother that sent you a video from Miles, I believe, right? About Amazon.
Yes.
Do you credit that with the beginning of your Amazon adventure?
Absolutely. And I remember the drive. We were taking my sister to high school, and I was about to leave for college in 2 weeks at that point. And I was talking to him. I was like, okay, I'm going to college. I want to start a real business. Like the shoe thing's slowing down. The market's not as good. Do you have any ideas of what I can start in college, kind of a side hustle I can make money in college versus the typical, working at Taco Bell or Five Guys or whatever? And he had mentioned Miles and said, I know Miles back from selling shoes when Miles used to sell shoes as well. He's been doing this Amazon thing. Let me send you his information and send a video on like how he does this. So he sent that to me. I started learning, taking notes in a notebook, hours when I first got on campus, and then reached out to Miles and was able to connect with him to basically learn more and jumpstart my business. And the rest is history.
Nice. Were you able to see the connection? Yeah. Looking back, were you able to connect what you were doing with skee ball, the shoes, and then Amazon? Did it all make sense and fit together like a puzzle, or did that come afterwards?
Absolutely. It's all arbitrage. But we were arbitraging the shoes. I was arbitraging skee ball, now arbitraging products on Amazon. And the coolest thing was the discounted gift cards, because with skee ball, I would buy Pinhead's discounted gift cards from Costco, 20% to boost my margin. And every day with my OA business, I'm buying discounted gift cards from wherever retail I'm buying from, discounted gift cards. And it was the same ordeal with skee ball. It's just an extra profit boost. It's a no-brainer. It's a margin built in, when you sell that product.
Yeah, smart.
I got to ask, what's your brother doing today?
He is now working on a brand that we launched in last October, private label. So with the money I've made from online arbitrage, we are now putting that into our own brand to build some equity and to build that brand up. So him and I are partners in that, and that is what he's working on, as well as me with my OA. So he got out of the shoe business in 2025, sold everything. The market, it's not as good as it used to be with the shoes, but he's working his time on our brand, which is called Simple Paws. It's on Amazon. It's on TikTok. And he's also sports betting, arbitrage. So he'll find bets where he's guaranteeing a profit. So he's betting on both sides of the game with a profitable bet, meaning like one book is better odds than the book that you'll lose on. And he's making 1% to 2% per bet, taking advantage of bonuses. So just still hustling.
Nice. I'm glad to see he didn't fall to the dark side and go get a job. That makes me happy.
Yep.
All right. So let's go back to, September 2023. You're a freshman in college. You're on the baseball team. And the way that I read it is you were sitting in your girlfriend's dorm and you refresh the seller app and you see your first sale.
Yep.
And I read that you posted, you're like, I'm never going to forget that feeling. Can you kind of take us back, and what did you sell? How much did you make? And did it click immediately? This is the way, or was it just, oh, cool, let's see if I can run this thing up?
Yeah. So it was a mascara item. I could only buy 6 at a time off of their website, or else they would cancel your orders. But I could place like 6 every 2 days. So I bought 12. I bought 6 one day, and then a couple days later, I bought another 6. And then I waited for the first product to be sold. And when I was checking my app like every hour when I listed them, checking it every hour. And when I saw that it sold, I didn't sell 1, but I sold 2 within 5 minutes of each other. and it was $7 profit each unit, 14 bucks. So it did click in that moment because I wasn't working. I was at my girlfriend's dorm, just chilling, and I made 14 bucks. So it did click. And I thought, wow, I can really set this up to where I don't have to physically devote my time somewhere. I don't have to physically be anywhere to make money. I can just make money while, I'm doing whatever I need to do and then put in the work when I need to put in the work. So it was $14 profit across those 2 units, mascara item. And that feeling was surreal. This is real. This actually works. I actually sold something on Amazon to an Amazon customer. That was amazing.
It is a great feeling. I remember my first sale, even to this day.
Yeah.
It was not mascara. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast or not. My first sale was a vintage Playboy magazine, and it was merchant fulfilled. I bought them from this creepy guy, off Craigslist, and I sold them on Amazon and ship them out in a yellow envelope to make sure nobody sees what it is. And yeah, it's crazy, All right. So you're a young guy when you start doing this, which I love. Like I know that some of the longtime sellers kind of look down their nose, and I certainly don't. And a lot of them be like, oh, well, you've got a leg up because you've just got time. But when you started, like, you were managing baseball practice, you got weight room sessions, you've got classes, you got an Amazon business, you got a girlfriend, they obviously want some of our time. And in your first full year, you still ran it up to $800,000 in sales. How do you manage all of that while maybe even, did you have a personal life, or was it just work and baseball and schoolwork and a little bit of time with your girlfriend? Like, how did you fit it all in?
That's exactly what it was. Is I necessarily didn't have that big of a personal life outside of that time frame because I was so focused on work, and then I had baseball practices, eventually the season in the spring, and workouts and class. But on the weekends, like, I would spend time with some friends on the weekends, but that was it. During the week, I was completely dialed in, starting this business, trying to make it work. Anytime that I wasn't either in class or at a workout or at practice, I was working on Amazon. That's all I was doing all night, and then go to bed, wake up, get all my stuff done with baseball and school, and then right back to Amazon, talking with buddies, meeting people in the community, learning, watching YouTube videos, and then diving in myself and buying products. My first December was that year, 2023. I did $100,000 in sales at my college apartment, and that was mostly FBM, and I was on the 3rd floor. So I would it was a lot of retail arbitrage during that time, but I wasn't in there scanning stuff. I would source it online, find out what to buy, what I needed, and then go in the stores and just buy as much as I could because I've already tested those products. I know they sell well. I'm just going to go find as many as I can, get them that same day and sell them that same day, and then do that the next day. So I had to carry all the product up to the 3rd floor, walking up the stairs whenever I went out and bought those products. So that was my life, was work, baseball, school for that time frame.
That's awesome. I want to dive into the student athlete portion just a little bit. I never got to play at the college level, but I did play in high school. And I think that student athletes in particular, maybe have a little bit of a leg up when it comes to entrepreneurship and Amazon. What were you able to take away from playing ball at college that you can use in business?
I totally agree with that. Absolutely. What I was able to learn was the discipline side of things, showing up to practice every day, getting better, whether that's on defense, fielding ground ball, hitting. Like, you're hitting every day, you're going to have some bad days and some good days. And you may not see that progress, right? But as time goes by, you are getting better. And same with businesses. You may not see progress month 1, month 2, month 3, but as you put in the reps and learn and do it yourself, eventually you will see those results in business. And it's the same that goes for baseball. Practice, you may not see that you're getting better, or the weight room, you may not see yourself getting physically stronger. But if you do it long enough and you stick to it, you will see that progress down the line.
I love that.
Yeah. We were just talking about that. It's interesting. A lot of the self-help, and entrepreneur books that we read, how it aligns with sports, kind of falling in love with the process and,
Yeah.
kind of embracing the monotony of the drills, just to be ready for the one moment that you need that muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly.
So eventually the success, this is again in 2023, we're talking about, you ended up dropping out of college to go full time on Amazon. I believe that was around the middle of 2024, that next year at the end of the baseball season. Curious, how did that conversation go with mom and dad?
It was a very hard decision, and I was back and forth on all of it and talked to my buddies, got their opinion. All of my entrepreneurship friends were like, yeah, you got to drop out. This is working for you. You may have a big future here. And then my parents, on the other hand, they were more bummed out about me stopping baseball because I played baseball my whole life. And for me to just stop right when I'm in college, everything I've ever worked for in baseball, I got to the college stage, and after 1 year to give it up and go all in on this business that I just started 6-7 months ago, it was a tough decision, but they were supportive about it, especially because my brother didn't go to college. He was an entrepreneur, he did the shoe business, still does side hustles and makes money. So that was also kind of a leg up on how they had trust in that and how you can make it work. But they were not entrepreneurs. They always went to school 9 to 5, typical, and all their friends the same thing. So they were more so hurt on the baseball side and how I had to hang up the cleats and in my baseball career. But outside of that, they were very supportive.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's I think that's probably one of the reasons that we get the negative reactions that we do, because so many of the older generations grew up with that traditional, you work a 9 to 5 for 40 years and then you retire. And, that was kind of just branded on our brains. So your dad was an accountant. Did you just kind of slide the P&L over to him, be like, Dad,
yeah, essentially. Yeah. And then I kind of showed him, the P&L, and then showed him my plan of scaling this thing and what I see I can do with this. And he was like, yeah, go for it, I guess.
Nice. So you've said, I believe this is a quote, all of my friends are packing up to go back to college while I'm packing backpacks for my Amazon business.
Yep.
Was there a moment where you questioned the decision, or were you too focused? Were you too deep into it by then to even cast it out?
Absolutely not. I didn't question me making that decision one bit. I actually, when that moment happened, like I was back home selling backpacks, supplying for the kids to go to school with the backpacks, and all my buddies were packing up, dreading going back to college for the school side of things. Obviously the social side I did miss out on, meeting people in college and getting that social life experience. But at the same time, is my business was thriving. It was growing every year and every season, I guess. And I saw that growth that specific August when I was just ripping some backpacks, FBM. I enjoyed it a lot more. Controlling my schedule, doing what I want to do, making a lot more money than a typical 9 to 5 would. So that moment, I definitely liked my decision a lot more and saw entrepreneurship as being the thing that I wanted to do.
That's awesome. I have to say, your generation, and man, I hate it. It makes me feel so old, but you guys who are in your 20s, like your willingness to bet on yourself is so much greater than people my age and older. And I don't know, I admire it. Yeah, I have always been entrepreneurial, but I took the safe path and worked for someone else, in a 1099 gig. And I admire that you guys bet on yourselves. It seems in much greater numbers than people my age are willing to do. All right, let's transition a little bit to that social aspect, networking, things like that. This is also something older sellers don't necessarily do very well. But you get connected with 3 guys from all over the country who didn't really know each other, and within a year, like all of you guys cross 6 figures in profit on Amazon. Just as well as we do, batting 1,000 is like almost impossible. So can you kind of walk us through how that network formed and what it looked like day to day? Were you guys on Discord? Were you guys sharing leads? Were you sourcing together? How did that go?
Yeah, so it was me, Parker, and Aaron, 0 Day Handle Time, and then Parker Beatier. We all started around the same time, that 2023 September time. And we were all inside of Miles's community, and Miles connected all of us because Parker played a college sport. Aaron was kind of the same age range as us. And since then, we yeah, we got on Discord almost every night. We shared pretty much everything. They were buying the same stuff. I was buying the same stuff they were buying. And it was a team sport because Amazon is so big and there's so much potential. You can do it with other people and everyone makes the same money. Everyone can sell the same stuff because there's so many buyers. In certain listings, there's so much demand. Multiple sellers can sell it at the same time. So once we got that engraved in our head and realized, okay, this is the game, 3 brains combined into one mission is way better than one brain going for that same mission. So we took advantage of that, got on Discord. We text every single day in a group chat, and we still do to this day. We text every single day, just updating Amazon stuff, life, entrepreneurship, investments, just anything you can think of that is in our life, I guess. But yeah, we grew together from the start. And then eventually we got a house together in Florida in Cape Coral for 3 months to be together in the same room every day and grow from there and just really lock in and just make more money together.
That's awesome. I really like that. And the boys are still in Amazon, both of them?
Parker is, and yeah, they both are.
Yeah.
Aaron is slowed down a little. Parker is still going at it, but they're trading now in sales. And so they're now growing their arsenal and building different skills because they're younger too. Parker is 27 and Aaron is 24. So they're learning, growing skills, but still doing Amazon for extra income. Yeah.
All right. So I read this note you wrote. You said you got a handwritten notebook from your first week on Amazon where you wrote down this process: find a product, test, and scale. What else is in those notes? And like how much of those kind of beginner notes are still what you do today?
I cracked the notebook open this morning to kind of reread what I was writing down. And I was going through it, and almost everything I wrote down in my notebook is the same thing that I use on a daily basis. Seller Amp, Keepa, reverse sourcing. I have notes on coupons and seasonal stuff, like how Q4 is obviously the best time of year for Amazon sellers and to double down on Q4. It's all the same stuff. The basic softwares you need, how to source, how to find new products, new brands. It is all the same stuff. And it's crazy how everything I wrote down, I'm still using to this day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's in our, you say all the, the same brands and how much that information in that notebook still applies. It's there was an analogy that you can use it for a golf swing or a baseball swing. Everybody kind of has a different setup. There's a bunch of different batting stances and stuff, but it's amazing when you actually get down to impact. Almost everyone's in the same position. The balance, the head stays behind the ball. It's you get all these variations around, but when you get down to it, everybody's the same at impact to it, which I think that's kind of indicative of the core principles in your notebook. They still apply year after year as you've grown. So Q4 2024 rented the house with the boys to grind through the holiday season. During that Q4, I believe you hit your first $600,000 month and your first 6-figure profit month during that stretch. What did that house look like on a day-to-day basis? Was it chaos?
It was chaos on some days when we had to spend, when we found a lead, and then it was, but for the most part, it really wasn't. Every day was a routine. We got into a routine. We would get up early, 6 a.m., go to the gym, first thing, come back home, make the same breakfast every single day. It was over easy eggs, sausage, bacon, sourdough toast every day. And then steaks at night. We were eating pretty good. Nutrition was on point. We were working out because all 3 of us were accountable for each other. We were pushing each other. So outside of business, our health and our nutrition, they were on point, and that really impacted, our life. As you guys know, in entrepreneurship, that all matters. If you don't have that intact, then the business may not be what it could be. Outside of going to the gym, coming back, making food, the rest of the day was ours. I'm from Indiana, so the weather was not so good here. So it was really good for me to be out in the sun every day too and enjoy that good weather. But on the working aspect, we would be every day working, finding leads, finding products. There was 1 week where we sat down and we started sourcing, and we came across something that I had sold in the past because we were kind of stuck at one point. We were like, okay, Q4 is coming up. We need to load the boat and we need to find some leads. And then we were thinking back to like our past, what could we maybe find again that we've sold in the past and double down on? And we came across something. And then we both took that one product and expanded from there. We found other sellers that were selling the same product, finding out what else they were selling as well. And then next thing you know, we found 10 different leads that we could buy and go deep on. And that would not have happened if I was still at home by myself, working, texting them. But since we were all there together in person, working together, sourcing, we came across leads that blew up our business. And I would not have been able to make 6 figures profit in December if it wasn't for that trip.
Do you think you would have gotten there eventually? Do you think it sped it up, or do you think you tapped into something that you might not have tapped into cohabitating with them?
Yeah, that's it. I think we tapped into something we would not have found or came across if it wasn't for us being together. And like I said, taking swings every day, sourcing every day, eventually we came across that one thing. And that right there and jump scaled all 3 of our businesses. And since we found that kind of niche, I'm still sticking to that to this day. I'm still selling those same products year over year. And we wouldn't have found it that quickly if it wasn't for that trip.
Nice. You talked about documenting sales and sales cycles and spreadsheets so you can run them again.
Yeah.
How systematic is that process? Do you have a calendar of sales that you're tracking year over year? What's your process for that?
Not necessarily a physical calendar. I just kind of know in my head when those good sales are coming around. Because my model, I like to go deeper when I get the opportunity to. And there's a certain sale, they only run it 2 or 3 times a year. And when that time comes, I'm hammering those ASINs, those SKUs that I've sold in the past, and I'm loading up for a couple months because I know that once that sale is done, these items are not going to be on sale for the next 6 months. So I get it for the cheapest price during that time period, and that's my time to load the boat. Because I know from years of experience with Amazon buying the same product, that product will not be on sale again. So it's pretty much like in my head, when this month comes around, I know to look at this website, at this product, at this brand, whatever. Yeah.
So if it's that infrequent, I imagine there are other sellers that you don't know who are also stocking up on these products.
Yeah.
So are you holding inventory a little bit back to have your lower buy cost if there's any price erosion, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's definitely other sellers. I actually do have a spreadsheet of those sellers that are in the same category, and I'm tracking, okay, what did they buy this time around? What they buy the other time around? And what I've noticed is they're not buying as much inventory as I'm buying, stocking out for those months. So they will sell out and I will still have inventory left. And then at that point, I can control the price. I can go up in price. And some of these items are limited edition. I love buying limited edition items, selling them out of the store, and then being the only seller, or me and Parker being the only seller on those listings, because we can control that price and we can sell it for whatever we want as long as it's still selling. So I've had a lot of success. It's almost like buying a stock. I've had a lot of success putting money into a product that's limited edition, getting it out of stock, and then holding and selling a little bit here and there, but holding as I can raise the price as other sellers sell out. So that is kind of a strategy I implement. It's not my entire business model, but over the course of the year, I'll buy a couple items that I know sells well, and I know I can get out of stock and just control the market on Amazon.
It's interesting. So the ROI towards the end of your inventory cycle actually gets higher, where you see enough Keepa charts, the majority of the sellers, their ROI is going down as they're selling out. So that's it's pretty smart.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a little jealous of the trip. I've had this idea in my head for a long time. It sounds weird, but this like entrepreneur commune where, people get together and like they hold each other accountable and stuff like that. That's nice that you did that.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the OA playbook a little bit. You've broken down your August numbers, and I know like you were doing some YouTube videos for a little while and stuff like that. You've been on Instagram, but back in August of 2024, you shared all of your revenue numbers publicly. It was like 240,000 in revenue, 122,000 in cost of goods sold, and things like that. And you had every expense, and you landed roughly around 36,000 in profit, which is solid. Most sellers never share this kind of breakdown. Why? What made you decide to be like that transparent?
That's just kind of who I am. I'm a very honest guy, transparent guy, and I wouldn't want to, a lot of sellers out there do share their revenue and say it's all profit, whatever. I'm just a transparent guy, and I like to be honest with my viewers and make sure that they know that this is what it actually looks like profit-wise, because a lot of beginners question how much of that is actually profit. And I wanted to share, the truth of Amazon. So yeah, I just broke down my own profit numbers to share with people who may want to know that what exactly of that is profit. So yeah, I just want to be transparent with the people that were watching and to make sure that if they do want to start Amazon, this is about what your profit margin is going to be with OA. And I know wholesale, you can get a little bit lower margins, but with OA, this is where it's at.
Have margins stayed about the same as you've scaled up, or have they had to come down?
They've actually stayed the same roughly. December, my margins were about 18%, the $1.1 million month. So it was amazing. I was able to find a ton of leads during that time. I know you guys just had Steven on. Steve and I were working together, buying similar stuff and just doubling down and making the most of it during that Q4 time. But now January and February, my margins are lower than that December month because prices have dropped since then, since the demand rush. I had to lower some prices. So my margins have gone down in the past 2 months, but December when we were pumping, the margins were about the same.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You were like 50-50 FBA and FBM back then. A lot of sellers at that level, like they're 90% or more FBA. What's your philosophy on when to merchant fulfill and when to do FBA?
Yeah. So I only really merchant fulfill in August or December, November of Q4 because stuff sells FBM, like flies FBM on certain listings. And the way the margin works, FBM on certain products is sometimes you will get more profit if you sell FBM versus FBA because there's less fees and you're getting a better margin with that. And another thing I like too about FBM is the multi-unit orders. If you get an order of 2, you only have to buy a shipping label for that one order, which increases your margins significantly. Now, if you sell 50 orders of 2 versus a couple, then it really makes sense and it boosts your margin significantly. So if you're able to FBM and you have the time to FBM during those hot months, I totally recommend it because you can get a lot better margin on certain products. And obviously, when you're looking at that margin, SellerAmp will tell you that. Check SellerAmp, slide the FBM tab, put in your estimated shipping costs, and compare the two, FBM and FBA. Another reason I like FBM is because I've ran into issues where I'll send a product FBA, but it won't check in until late December, even in January. FBMing guarantees that I will have the product listed the day it arrives, and I don't have to worry about it checking in time FBA. So yeah, I like to get my FBA inventory in November, get it off, all checked in, ready for December. And then if I have to replin something, I will replin an FBM and sell it all at once in December versus worrying about the FBA check-in times.
Nice.
You've talked about going deep on fast selling items rather than wide on a larger number of SKUs. So buying hundreds or even thousands of one product, staying in stock, it lets you stay in stock for a longer period of time. That's the same strategy we've heard from several high-level OA sellers on the show. But doing 1.1 million in a month creates a massive capital requirement, right? How do you fund that kind of spend? And what does the credit card cash flow situation look like?
Yeah, I wasn't leveraged up until mid-November. Then I ran out of my own capital, my own money that I've made from keeping everything in the business since September 2023. I like the snowball effect, and I like it's compounding, right? Amazon is compounding if you keep it all in. You're buying new product, flipping it, and it's compounding. Once I ran out of money, I was up at night calling my friends, asking to use their credit cards, and then working out a deal with them, pay them back. They keep the cash back, maybe an extra 2% on top, because I know I can make more money using their money and paying them a small interest rate pretty much to grow from there. And then I also leverage credit cards myself. So I knew my cash flow. I had a lot of money that Amazon owed me. I had a lot of inventory that was being sold on a daily basis. So I knew my cash flow and I knew how much was going to come in over the next 30 days. So that gave me confidence in I can leverage credit cards here. I can get maybe 0% APR card and then wait for 6 months. If that term was for 6 months, I now have 6 months to get that money back on that card. So knowing my cash flow to leverage my own credit cards. And then once I was tapped out of that capital, calling friends, seeing who would loan me some money for 2 to 3 weeks and then paying back. And I was able to fund $100K in 2 days just from calling people on my contacts list that I knew could help out. And some people denied, but obviously that's part of it is you get a denial, try again, call your next guy. So yeah, self-funding was big during that time because I saw leads and I needed more money to buy those leads because I knew they were going to work out great, and they did. So yeah, at that point I was just dialing some of my friends to let me swipe their credit cards.
Dialing for dollars. That's impressive.
Yep.
Gavin, you're on record as saying if you believe in it enough, go into credit card debt for it. And that's advice that is going to frighten a lot of people listening. Can you put some guardrails around that? And where's the tipping point between leveraging credit cards, being smart versus reckless?
I think reckless credit card debt is one, buying a product you've never tested before and buying something that you have never sold previously. But if you build confidence around that specific product, you've sold it many times before, you know it's going to sell, you're going to get that money back and pay off that credit card. Two is if you're not keeping everything in the business and you're spending, you're going out on the weekends, going to the clubs, whatever, and you're spending too much money, like for your personal life, that is also another no if you're going to leverage credit cards to buy product with Amazon. Because if you're spending too much money on yourself and then you buy product on Amazon, that's less money coming. It's the same amount of money coming in, but then you're just raising your expenses, and that's more risk to pay off your card. So 2 things there is definitely have confidence around the product you're going to buy if you're going to go into that credit card debt, and know your cash flow too. Know how much inventory you have listed currently, how much is coming in, to make sure you have a cushion to be able to pay those cards off in time.
We've talked about this a little bit already, discounted gift cards, things like that. And of course, you're trying to stack every margin lever that you possibly can. Cash back, coupon codes, sales tax savings, using a prep center. If someone doing, let's say, between 10 and 30,000 a month came to you and they're not doing any of this, how much are they leaving on the table, and what direction would you point them in to get their feet wet with leveraging these margin accelerators?
Well, everything adds up. Everything adds up, including the credit card cash back, the discounted gift cards. If you have a system to make sure you've spent every dollar. And that's something that I ran into last year is when I was going back, my virtual assistant, when he was going back through all my gift card balances, there were still gift cards with balances on them, and that cuts into your margin. So having a good system as well to make sure you're spending every dollar on that credit card is absolutely needed, especially at scale. So that's one thing. But yeah, you're definitely leaving money on the table. If you're doing $30,000 months and you're spending roughly $15K, at 2%, that's $300 that you're missing out on every single month with a credit card. Then if you get into a discounted gift card, you can use a credit card to buy the discounted gift cards. Let's say a discounted gift card's 5% on $15K spend. That would be $750 that you're missing out on, plus the $300, so $1,050 every month if you're not discounting gift cards and you're not using credit card cash back that you're missing out on. So it all adds up. And then add a zero to that $30,000 month to a $300,000 month. You add another zero on the $1,050 that you're missing out on. So it really does add up. And if you're not doing that, you need to start right now.
If you don't mind me asking, what's been your best cash back month by itself?
My best cash back month was probably 65,000 cash back. Yeah, because it was in December of 2025, so a couple months ago. Cashback sites were at 10%, 10 to 14%. It was fluctuating, and I was getting 2.5% on top of that with the Chase Inc. Premier card as well, and that's stacking on top of each other. So to be able to do that, and they paid it all out already. Cashback is insane at scale. So even at the smaller, everything adds up. If you're not at the scale, it's a very good practice to be doing every day. And that's got to be your first thought. Okay, can I discount gift card this? Does this site have cashback? It has to be your first instinct to just get that extra push on your margin. Mm-hmm. So it was, $60,000 in straight cashback. I did not include that into my profit when I was looking to buy those products. That was just a cherry on top. It was insane to see. Yeah.
And so Do you use the cash back to fund your life, or do you funnel some of that back into the business to continue to grow? What's your aim there?
Ideally, as much as I can back in the business as possible. I live a pretty frugal life. I'm still living with my parents. I'm, younger, 21, still living with my parents to save money. I drive a 2003 car. It's been paid off for 5 years. So I don't have too much expenses in my life. So while I'm young, I just want to put as much as I can back in the business. But yeah, if I'm going to pay myself, it's going to be cash back. But I don't need to pay myself that much money in cash back. So whatever I'm not paying myself, going right back in the business, or it's going into a stock account or an investment account with, real estate or whatever. Yeah.
Your discipline is, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, might need to have you talk to some of my kids. Just a few months ago, we're talking November 2025, you dropped $250,000 on a single brand, a brand that you joked that you can't even pronounce. That's a massive bet. So I want to know a little bit behind the strategy to make that decision. And of course, I want to know how that worked out.
Yeah. So that was a product that, like I said earlier in this podcast, we only see it on sale twice a year. So it was towards the end of that sale. And what kind of sparked me to make this move was I saw the cashback was extremely higher for that week. And I noticed that. So not only was the product the cheapest I'll get, I'm also going to get this insane boost of cashback. So this is truly the lowest buy cost I'll ever get on this item. On top of that, it was limited edition. So it's my perfect product all to a T. So yeah, that's kind of what I saw and what I noticed. And I planned, this purchase was in late November around Black Friday. So I overbought inventory for Q4, planning to sell this in January, February, March. And I still have a couple hundred units left, but I've sold, almost 4,000 of them since then. Majority of them were sold in December. So I expected to still sell this product through January, February, March, and maybe some April. I should sell out in about 2 to 3 weeks. But by now I've made my investment back and the inventory that's left is pure profit. So yeah, I saw a huge opportunity in that and I decided to pull the trigger.
Were you nervous about it, or is that just the logical progression of everything you've done so far?
I was more excited and energetic, and when I was buying it, I wasn't nervous. No. Scared money don't make money. If you're scared about the product, you shouldn't be buying it.
It's true.
Without giving up any sauce, ruin a loop of your own or anything like that, there's two things that people always come and say, well, you guys never answer these questions. And one is, of course, ungating. Everyone's, how do I get ungated? But the second is, well, but how do I get around order cancels? One, of course, we always say, well, find the places that don't cancel. But is there any easy solutions for people who want to be able to go deeper on products and get around limitations?
Yeah, like you said, find the sites that don't cancel. That is a huge thing. Another could be, if your site has retail locations, try to see if they have any of that product in store. I've came across a product that I was getting orders canceled, but I had a store that was 15 minutes away and they had 50 units in store. So I was able to see that, and I went in store, I bought all 50 units and I wasn't able to get any in online. So that's always an option, is see if there's a local store that may have that stock in store. Another could be a price match method to a website that you're able to place multiple orders through, or go in store and price match into a different store. I've done that before. If they're in stock online on a site that cancels you, you can price match that to any other retailer that offers that. For example, this was Dick's Sporting Goods. I'll just say the company. And Dick's, we were price matching it to another website, going in store, and they had tons of inventory. So I was able to find out a way around that, and we were getting canceled from the other website. So that's exactly what I did. Went in store, price match, tax exempt, discounted gift cards, and I was actually able to get it cheaper at Dick's than I was at the other store.
That's great. Yeah, it really ends up being just like, don't be lazy. Do the extra work.
Find a way. Absolutely.
You have a team. You have some admin VAs or sourcing VAs. What does your team look like?
Yeah, so I have one virtual assistant and one prep center, and then me. Nice. And then my grandma too. My grandma is a huge help in my business. I gave her Secretary of the Year plaque last December. When awesome. I was FBMing at myself, she was there every single day helping me. Yeah. She's retired and she loves to see me every day and help me in my business. And yeah, so she's a part of the team, of course. But in terms of every single day online, I have a virtual assistant and a prep center. And my virtual assistant doesn't source for me because, like I said, I kind of know what I'm buying this year and next year and when I'm going to buy that stuff, because I might purchase differently than another OA seller. I like going deeper on stuff that I can get in a timely manner. So I control that side of the business. My virtual assistant is there to control leakage, to lessen my leakage, to make sure that all my gift card balances were spent, to make sure all my products got from place A, the prep center, to place B, Amazon, and there was no missing shipments, missing units. I've been able to train him to track all that stuff and then file claims himself through my Amazon account and get that money reimbursed. So that's kind of the task that, and then also order deliveries from the retailers to make sure all of my inventory was sent to the prep center, because sometimes retailers will short your units. So I've been able to train him to track that so I'm not getting shorted.
Perfect. So let's say a seller comes to you, they just hit 10K a month in sales. And Gavin, what should I hire out first? What do you tell them?
10K a month in sales. You should only get a prep center when you know you need to get a prep center. If you can do all the work yourself, if you're in a sales tax free state, absolutely do as much as you can until you can't anymore. And it also depends what they're buying. If they're buying higher ticket items and they're in a non-sales tax free state, you can send it to a prep center and you'll end up making more profit because you're not paying 7%. You're only paying a fixed price on that unit. So it depends what they're buying. And then also I would say hire a VA to do tasks that save your time and you're the master sourcer. I know a lot of people love the VA to source and the VA do that, which is fine if it works out for them. But me personally, I think if you can master sourcing and you find a system that it's working for you and you know exactly what to buy, you should be doing that. Maybe you can have them buy it for you, but if you know what to buy, you should be controlling that side of the business. The VA should be controlling admin work that you don't want to be doing, entering your buys into a buy sheet, tracking the leakage, making sure you're not losing out on money. If they have free time, maybe get them to source a little bit. But my model is like, I'm the best at sourcing. My VA, it may take him years to train to source how I like to source and what I like to buy. So that's kind of my take on that, is hire a VA to free up your time and make it make sense, because my VA is tracking all of these gift cards. And last year he found it was like $10,000 on gift cards that I thought that we had spent, but he found 10K. I don't even pay him 10K a year. And he was able to recover that. So there's my pay for him for a week's worth of his work. So that's the way I see it. And I know it's kind of controversial because not many people may side with that. And people think that VA is for sourcing, but I'm actually the opposite.
Yeah, we're starting to see a trend though, you know, with you and Steven, same thing. Yeah, that's very interesting. What do you think your personal sourcing limit is? Like, where can you scale this business before you do need someone to come in and help you either find more leads or buy for you?
So my VA actually does buy for me from time to time,
Okay.
But in terms of sourcing, I might be close to that limit. I want to start building on Walmart too. And I feel like that could be a way to kind of integrate a virtual assistant to maybe find some Walmart stuff from the couple sites that I use. And I really only buy from 3 to 4 websites year round. And I like to stick to those catalogs. So I may be close to that ceiling of myself, but I think I can scale it to probably 6 million a year with what I have in myself. And if I want to scale beyond that, then I might have to hire another VA to source different websites outside of that. So I might be close to that ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, 6 million a year, even if you're doing 12% margins overall, that's a incredibly solid business.
Absolutely.
So I know you've talked about the worst early decision was like hiring a shared VA across a bunch of people and then nobody trained them.
Yep.
What did you learn from that?
Yeah, I learned, do not hire a VA expecting them to know what you want them to do, because, you know, they may have worked for someone else or never worked in the e-commerce space at all. And if you just hire a VA expecting them to know what you want to do for your business, that's just not going to work out. And that's what we did. And we went through that. We lived through that. We trained him to source for us. We said, hey, we're Amazon sellers. This is what we want to buy. Oh no, it's cutting out. Sorry, are we good now?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we hired the VA to source for us, and we expected him to know exactly what we wanted to buy. And this is how I got to the conclusion of I'm a way better sourcer unless you take months to train the VA and tell him exactly what you're looking for. But he was doing no good. He would send us 10 to 15 leads a day, essentially. And I think we bought a total of one of his sourced leads over the course of 2 months that we had him. So then we kind of realized across those 8 people that this VA is not really doing any good sourcing for us. So Parker and I, we decided to just take him over and then train him for what we want him to do. And that's the same VA that I have today.
Oh, nice.
From 2 years ago. It's the same VA. And we've trained him differently than sourcing. We've trained him to run the whole back end of our business, to track stuff, to add to the buy sheet, to minimize the leakage and everything. So yeah, a shared VA is okay. I think it's fine, not across 8 people. Because also if they're sourcing for you, that's 8 people seeing that same lead. 8 people might be a stretch. Maybe 2 to 3 people can hop on the same listing, but 8 people is a lot. And especially if they're sourcing the same lead for 8 people, it probably won't work out. So yeah, I think shared VAs are fine. If I were to do it again, I would say I would go back and get my own VA for my own business and train him just for my business. But it's worked out, and it keeps costs down. But I think VAs can be really good ROI if you train them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the whip. Do we still call them whips? You said on Twitter, you said, I drive a 2003 beat up Acura TL. I still walk around in beat slides I've had for 2 years. I hate eating out, even if it's less than $10. I refuse to pay myself until I make it to the top. At what point do you start paying yourself? Where's the top, and what does it look like?
The point, and actually past couple months, I guess I paid myself, but not really for things like that I'm going to buy. But the point in time where I'm going to pay myself is actually, for example, a couple weeks ago, is if an opportunity comes across in my hands, such as like a real estate deal, commercial real estate deal. And that's what it was. Like I was able to connect with people locally, and I'm involved in a commercial real estate project. So I had to pull from the business. I paid myself, but it's going towards an investment for future profits. So if another opportunity comes across my way in terms of like investing, then like if I buy a house in the future, in a year and a half, I'll probably be looking for a house. That's when I will pay myself. But I'm not going to pay myself for no reason, because I don't know, I live a frugal life. I like to travel. I like spending money on travel, but not too much, It's not like I travel every 2 weeks. But yeah, I don't need much in my current life. So I'm just going to keep everything in the business and keep compounding that to stack as much as possible. And then if a positive ROI, appreciating asset type of deal or, venture comes across my table, then I will remove from the business and invest in that.
All right. So can you just play skee ball for fun, or are those days long gone?
Yeah, I can.
All right,
I've been back since. They've changed it all up. And I think that's because of me.
Yeah, you might have a poster on the wall.
Yeah, I have to in the back.
Alert the manager if you see this, man.
Yeah.
So you said it on the same note, doubling down on this sentiment, you said your goal should be to live on cash back and credit card points and let the money in the business grow. You don't need a Lambo. You need to spend more on inventory.
Exactly.
So at your age, what's the discipline like? Is there anything you can share with the audience, or is this just all coming naturally?
It comes from my grandma and my mom, I guess. Like they live frugal. They don't need a lot of money to live, and they're extremely happy. And my grandma's lived in the same house for 25 years. I've lived in the same house for 21 years now, and we're happy with what we have. You don't need anything more than family and whatever satisfies you during that day. I'm not extremely materialistic, so I don't need to be driving like a Lamborghini these days. I'd rather buy something that appreciates and buy something that makes money for itself, whatever. But yeah, I guess I learned from my grandma and my mom on how to be like, complacent. Don't get a big head, don't get a big ego, and don't go out splurging.
That's admirable.
Just stay disciplined and humble.
It's not necessarily the pursuit of happiness, but the happiness is in the pursuit of growing the business. I like that.
That's right.
So you see the scoreboard light up to 7 figures in a 30-day period. As much as I want to see everyone hit those kind of numbers, that is rarefied air. What does that feel like?
It felt great. I would say the first sale was a bit better feeling. As crazy as that sounds, just like the whole process and like what I was doing on a daily basis to get to that point was a better feeling than when it actually happened. That was my goal the entire year, is to hit that. And I knew I was going to hit that. I just knew I was going to get over that hump and hit that $1 million month. And then when it came real, yeah, it was real, but I think I was happier, seeing that first sale and that whole progress. And kind of a day in my life during that month was I had hired 4 or 5 guys locally. I was FBMing out of my house, FBMing out of 2 other warehouses, then all the FBA inventory. But at my house, when we were FBMing, those moments with those friends, like hiring them, I took them out to a steakhouse too, like them packing for 4 hours, FBM orders. That was a lot more enjoyable than seeing that $1 million month, and seeing that, actually come all together was just the moments, with those friends, with my grandma. Those times were a lot more enjoyable, and, I miss those days looking back now, but yeah.
All right. We have to end these things with a little bit of a lightning round. You've said it's always the most technical people that sell the least. What do you mean by that?
I would say people getting caught up in spending goals, or like sourcing goals. I need to source 2 hours every day, or I need to spend $100 a day. I don't think that's right, because, with OA, you may not see an opportunity every single day when you're sourcing. For me in my business, I see opportunities, and then I like to spend a lot at once. So maybe I'm spending 50, 100K every 2 weeks, and then I'm not spending for the next 15 days. And I think if people get too caught up in that, they're going to miss out on opportunities. If they're spending $100, $200 a day, over the course of a week, and then they see an opportunity that, wow, I could have bought 500 of these, but they didn't have the money because they accepted something making, 20 ROI because they had to hit their spending goal. That's what I meant by that. And, just don't get caught up in spending goals. Yes, you need to source often, but go deeper when the time comes and you see an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the biggest L you've taken on Amazon? This could be the worst buy, worst decision, thing that cost you the most money, or the thing that taught you the hardest lesson.
First, never use post office when you're shipping hazmat. They lost $14,000 buy cost of my inventory from the prep center to Amazon. Lost off the grid. Tracking, like, just stopped at one location. I created missing mail searches. I went to the local post office, tried to get them to help, and they're like, this product was either stolen or just completely lost. And that was with post office. So I've ever since then used UPS to ship that type of stuff, and I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had an issue. So yeah, I lost a ton of inventory that way with post office shipping that. So that hurt. Secondly, I hate to say don't go too deep, because that's my motto, is I just go deep. But I did go too deep on this one item back in 2024, December. It was a seasonal item. And I went too deep on it before the listing I gave the listing a chance to get proof that this item was selling. We had bought the product when the listing came out 3 days ago. And then we were like, all right, screw it. We're going to buy a couple thousand of these items. It was me, Parker, and Aaron, all 3 of us. So we bought a bunch of inventory. We all went on the same listing, but the listing came out a little bit late, and it was seasonal. So it didn't have enough time to pick up speed and sell all of our units collectively. So we ended up having to return those items in January and to get that money back to then reinvest it. And then some of the products I wasn't able to return, and I had to hold them for the entire year to wait for the seasonal item to come back in season and then sell it a whole year later. And by doing that, is you're missing out on that compounding effect on that dollar, because that investment is just sitting on that product over a year. You're not turning that money. You're not flipping that money 4 or 5 times throughout the whole year. And even if you're getting like 100, and I ended up making money on it, like 80% ROI on the product, because it was seasonal, limited edition. I still had stock of it, and it was gone just on Amazon. It was 80% ROI, but I would have made more money if I was able to flip it 3 or 4 times at 25 ROI each time, because of that compounding. And the math is the math. You can do the math on a calculator. You will make so much more money if you can flip your money faster multiple times versus a bigger ROI over the course of a whole year. So that was a mistake I made, is if you are in that situation, maybe liquidate it, get it back at a break even, and then flip that money for a whole nother year. You're going to make more.
I know you're not a big spender, but what's a purchase that you've made under $500 in the past 6 months or a year that's had a big impact either on your business or in your personal life?
Ooh, I would say, and this is free, I don't know if this counts, but connecting with local entrepreneurs, if that counts.
Oh, that counts.
Because like social media, yeah, you can text people, reach out, network with people online that you may not see in person. But over the past year, I've been meeting a lot of people locally that are entrepreneurs that run their own business, meeting them at coffee shops and getting to know what they do, and just building a relationship around the people in my local Fishers, area. And that led me into a real estate deal recently that I think is going to be huge. And then once I'm in this real estate deal, I'll be able to meet the other people in that deal and then, build off of them. And it's free. It's all free to go out there and talk to people and meet people and talk about business and life. And that has jumped my network, obviously, but my investments. Now I'm involved in some pretty cool investments that will then boost my business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say networking, talking to people, meeting people, etc.
So I want to dive a little deeper on that because, a lot of people are like, oh, that's very people-y. I'm happy behind my keyboard. Are you just walking into the local Starbucks and looking for the guy with the Wall Street Journal? Or are you going to, local entrepreneur events and walking around and saying hey to people?
Yeah, I've been to a couple local entrepreneur events, but the people that I've met have come from when I least expect it. The people that, like, for example, there's a local steakhouse owner that I met at a bar one night with my parents and just started talking to him. And then, he mentioned that he owns 2 of the steakhouses locally. And then now I'm meeting with him every month, just talking about investments. He's a mentor to me. Another guy, I met him through talking to the coffee shop worker, and he connected me to another guy that does private label along with me locally. And I didn't know I'd meet someone locally that does private label in Fishers, Indiana. Turns out there are people that do that, and I found them. So it's honestly putting yourself in spots that can happen. And I'm not forcing anything. I'm just going out into the real world, talking to people, just going about my business. And all of a sudden you meet someone that does the same thing as you, when you least expect it. So my biggest connections have been when I least expect it.
That's great.
What can you give us a book or a podcast or a video that when you're in your network, what are you telling the people in your network? Hey, you got to check this out.
Yeah. It's Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Been reading this book. Sure. You guys read it. And I feel like it relates with me because the author talks about, being younger, investing early means higher gains in the future because of that compounding effect and because how that money can work for you long term. And that's how Warren Buffett, I believe he was referring to, got rich, because he got in the market like at a very young age, and now he's 85, 90, whatever, however old he is. And that money was able to compound over those years and make him extremely rich. And another kind of topic that I want to reference is that splurging your money is not going to get you where you want to be in the future and build wealth, because you may have someone that they make the same amount of income, but if you have person A that invests it and saves it versus person B that spends it all but is bringing in the same amount of income, but then spends it on like cars or, fancy stuff, that person A long term is going to be a lot wealthier than that person B who's just splurging their money. So I kind of related to that. And it's a very good read, kind of breaking down the psychology of money and how being smart with your money can take you a long way.
Awesome. We're going to see you in Miami this year?
Yeah, I haven't been, but I think I'm going to go this year. I've always wanted to go. I just never took the trip. But yeah, I think I'm going to go this year. So I will see you guys.
Great. Where can people go follow you online now? What's the best place to reach out or, follow you?
I'm mostly active on Instagram at Gavin FBA. Same thing on Twitter too, but I'm an Instagram guy. So I'm on Instagram there.
Perfect. We always end with a quote of the week. And this week is, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And that is, of course, by the immortal Bruce Lee. And the reason I chose this one is from what I've seen and, in the research that I did, it seems like your playbook is, of course, going deep, then, going really wide. You find a product that works and you end up taking some big swings when you're confident about it, which is only happens because you practiced that one kick 10,000 times. And I thought that this went perfectly with your approach. Dude, this was great. I really appreciate you spending the time with us and talking about your business.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's the show, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.